Hi guys, I'm EVM and welcome back to the channel. Now I've owned two Nissan Leafs. I still own my 30 kWh Leaf. So this, the Nissan Leaf ePlus, should be a car I'm really excited and looking forward to driving. But actually, I'm not. For me, Nissan have massively dropped the ball on this one. And this is why. We'll start with the outside and then continue on the inside before we take it for a drive. From the front end, it's actually not too bad. I quite like that. It's a refresh of the design of the original Leaf, and it looks more generic rather than a car that screams, "Look at me, I'm electric." So that bit's not too bad. But as soon as you get to that bit there, where the door starts, and then look at it to where the other door ends, it's identical in every way pretty much to my Nissan Leaf, the car that came out in 2011. There's a little bit of a difference there, I guess. And if we go around the back, you have this two-tone paint. I can't say I'm a fan of that, if I'm honest, so I'd probably get this in black if I ever did. It's just another Euro box, isn't it? It looks like every other car on the road, nothing too exciting. If I open this door here, before we go on the inside, this door card is exactly the same. I mean, totally identical to my 30 kWh and the 24 Leaf I had before it. Let's have a look at the boot. Well, what a shocker. It's the same as the old Leaf. They've even left the Bose subwoofer in the bottom, and that is screwed down. You can't move that at all. Which means that if you want to put anything flat in this boot, you can't, because they've left the subwoofer in it. That is something that has annoyed Techno owners on the original Leaf for 8 years, but they've still done it on this car. It's not exactly the easiest car to load up. It's very deep, but I have found it actually quite practical. And if you put the seats down, you can fit a fair bit of stuff in there, to be perfectly honest with you. Other than that, as I said, it's the same car. So ultimately, this is a Nissan Leaf that's had a different rear end, a different front end put on it, and the middle bit is identical. A lazy facelift, it certainly is. Let's have a look inside. Cheap plastic feel to it. But when we get to the steering wheel, they have actually changed that, so that's not too bad. It's like your typical Nissan steering wheel now. I don't mind that at all, that's an improvement. They've also obviously changed the dash binnacle, because that used to have a split. There used to be the speedometer up here and the rest of the dash information there. Now, I'll be honest, I prefer a digital readout for the speed rather than this, which they've gone down the typical dial route. Probably because they're trying to normalise it rather than make it different just for the sake of being different. So yeah, I kind of wish they'd stuck with the split level bit, to be honest. I prefer that. But this is quite nice to have, and you can obviously cycle through the various settings. If we move over there, we have a new touch interface, which, well, when I say new, it's basically the same but with a different kind of panel. Relatively snappy. Quicker than the 30 Leaf, I guess. So I don't mind that too much. The maps, however, I'll come to later. Down here, it gets very familiar. This is straight out of the previous Leaf. This is exactly the same as the previous Leaf, only it's black. But the dashboard itself is actually a completely different dashboard, basically. It's very different. Definitely an upgrade. Although the materials, they are... It's cheap as that. There's no softness, there's no compression there at all. That's the old scratch test that everybody loves. This bit here, this tiny bit there, that's kind of leather on this Techno ePlus version, that's not too bad. But the rest of it, yeah, it's, like I said, it's exactly the same in almost every way. And as I said, it kind of suffers from the same thing. But ultimately, you know what? Normally that wouldn't have bothered me on the on my Leaf, but I'll come to why it does in this in a bit. Black gloss around here. Thankfully it's been reduced, but it's still there. Mine has a few scratches on it you'll never get out, and of course, as you can, well, you might not be able to see here, but it's full of fingerprints, and you'll never ever get rid of them for more than 4 seconds. I'm constantly doing this, and I wish cars would go away from having black gloss where people's hands go. It just doesn't work. Nice kind of storage bit for your phone, I guess. You got your handbrake there, and cup holder, and a bit of a, well, kind of small storage, if I'm honest. Start button was over there, now it's over here. Switches, they've basically just rehashed the old Leaf onto a new dashboard. In the back, it's a family size car. The middle rear bench is a bit short range trips only, but I have had a Leaf for nearly 5 years now, a 2430, which is basically the same interior, and we've done camping. It's practical enough for most families. If you can get away with a Ford Focus type sort of size car, this should be fine as well. You've probably already noticed that I'm slightly miffed at this car already. And that's because Nissan, when they launched it, or rather before they launched it, they said it was going to be the all-new Nissan Leaf. And in reality, it was a lazy facelift for me. So that annoyed me, especially for someone who's been in a Leaf for, two Leafs for nearly 5 years now. This was not what they said it would be. So the expectation was up here and the reality was down here. So straight away, it was on a bad start. I'm recognising my car almost everywhere I look. That is not an all-new car, Nissan. I don't care which way you look about it, it's not. So this has got 215 brake horsepower, which is about 100 more than my Leaf. Yeah, I can believe that. 0 to 60 in just over 7 seconds, assuming you can put the traction down, of course. And yeah, that's a welcome upgrade. The old Leaf wasn't slow, but it needed a bit more, so that's a good thing. The ride is a little bit better, I would say, probably because of the extra batteries, the extra weight. They've no doubt had to stiffen it up a bit. Now, I once described my Leaf as handling like a little bit of a blancmange. This, as I said, is slightly better. I would say the extra weight of the batteries have made it a little bit better at handling. But it's not meant to be a hot hatch, is it? However, when you give something over 200 brake horsepower, that's hot hatch territory. I mean, spin wheels. Obviously it's wet. Yes, that has an effect, but I think this has got almost too much power for the chassis and the brakes and the handling to properly cope with. Maybe they should do a proper Nismo edition where it's stiffened, lowered, wider tyres, something like that. That would make it a lot better. Now let's talk about the price, because this is where it all goes wrong for this car. £36,000 and up. I went on Nissan's website and ticked everything I could find, and the price went to over £42,000 for a Nissan Leaf. Now, I'm not sure how many people are aware, but Leaf actually is an acronym. Affordable Family Vehicle. It's low emission. It's not affordable. I mean, £36,000 for the Leaf ePlus, the Techno. That is a couple of grand away from a Tesla Model 3. But in terms of capability, it's miles away. Now, I say this time and time again, it's all about expectation. I expected this to be as good as the original Leaf, and it is, but I also expected it to be good value. And I'm sorry, but at what is literally double the price, more than double the price for what I paid for my 30 kWh Leaf, which granted had heavy discounts at the time, it's just not even close. It's more expensive than the e-Nero, it's more expensive than, well, pretty much every other car in its sort of category, in its class. And its range at 215 real world miles, that's about 40 less from my experience than the e-Nero. And it's more expensive. And it's not as practical. And it's, well, the e-Nero isn't a car from 2011 that's been refreshed. Now this has just come out, so it'll be sold for a few years yet, obviously. Which means that you'll be buying a car in a couple of years' time, which is basically the same as a car that came out a decade earlier. I have a problem with that. I mean, let's face it, spec one of these up, as I said, you have to pay luxury car tax. Luxury car tax? It's a Leaf. Affordable? Where? If this was 28, 29 grand, I would be thinking, you know what? It's got its faults, it's not very efficient, it's got no thermal battery management, part of it's identical, but it's decent value. For the range you get, that'd be all right. But at this price, it's just ridiculous. Every single competitor this car has is better in most categories, if not all, and is typically cheaper as well. I can't hammer it home enough that this is a car that is going to be right at the bottom of my list in terms of what car I get next. And I've not even got into the thermal battery management problems that the 40 kilowatt had. It's down to that expectation of what Nissan created. They used to be, I would say, visionaries when this car first came out. It was affordable due to discounts granted, but it was the first EV for the masses in my head. And now it's not even close. There's a bit of a parallel going on here. They remind me of the old MG. When it was British owned and they took the Rover 200, turned it into the Rover 25, and then several years later turned it into the MG ZR. They were just rehashing basically the same car because they couldn't afford to develop anything else. And this is what I think is happening to Nissan. I've spoken to two completely different dealers, different franchises and all that, and they have both said the same thing to me, independent of one another. The relationship between them and Nissan Europe is at present toxic. That's coming from dealers, not me. My experience of customer service in the two Nissan Leafs that I've owned, and I still own a Nissan Leaf for 30, has been awful. Really, really bad customer service. And I've just got this sneaking feeling that they're in such financial doo-doo. They're bringing cars out like this, just like MG did years ago. I mean, take a look at this headline. How bad must you be doing to have that sort of thing happen? I mean, take this car. They've developed it and changed the dash, changed the front, changed the rear, and that's it. It's like all their R&D budget was spent on ProPilot, which is their version of autonomous driving. It's not as good as Tesla's, even they say that yet. It should get better. But for me, all of their money, all of their research and development has been put into ProPilot, and that's it. They've forgotten about the rest of the car. No thermal battery management. They've just cosmetically changed the front end and the dash, and the rest is the same. It's like they're going to go bust soon. They're not. They're too big for that. It's not like MG were back then. But profit warnings, dealers saying that they're crap at the moment, and they've got a toxic relationship, and then they produce something like this at that price level. What's happening, Nissan? You used to be visionaries, and now, well, you just become another car company that doesn't seem to care about its customers at all. I would, hand on heart, genuinely say that I would go for the MG EZS over this. Not only would you save, what would it be, 11, maybe £12,000, but that has a bigger interior, I think a nicer interior, and granted it doesn't have the range. There's about 60 miles more range in this, but for 12 grand I think I'll put up with it. It's not a terrible car, it's just a massively overpriced one. Oh Nissan, what have you done? You've screwed up big time. I'm sat in a 10-year-old car. Wow, it's got e-pedal. That's good, but it's not worth what you're selling it for. This, for example, typifies my experience with Nissan. I have a 2016 30 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf, and as far as the 24 and 30 goes, I could not recommend them enough. I started my YouTube channel because of the Nissan Leaf. I used to be called Electric Leaf Man. I only changed it to Electric Vehicle Man to be more generic. So no one can accuse me of being biased against Nissan, but they have so dropped the ball on this. Now, one example among many is the sat-nav in my Nissan Leaf. It's basically got a map inside it from, I think, the second quarter of 2016. And that is the last possible map update that car will ever receive. They are doing no more for that model. That was also sold in cars in the early 40 kilowatt hour facelift Leaf. So the same one as this, just a smaller battery. They had the same map, which means you were buying a car from early, I think it was late 2017 or early 2018, that had a map from the second quarter of 2016 in it that will never be updated. I've spoken to people with a brand new 40 kilowatt hour Leaf, back in 2018 anyway, whose road they lived on from a housing estate that was built like 7 or 8 years ago wasn't on their car sat-nav. There was no Android Auto or Apple CarPlay built into that either. This model does. That's gone, you know, they've got a better map, so with the ePlus it's not relevant. But that kind of typifies what Nissan have been penny pinching to an extreme extent, and it's why they've really annoyed me to the point where I can't recommend this car at all. Not at this price bracket. It's about £8 grand too expensive. Luxury car tax. Right guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.